24 minutes past the hour, and we look at these classic looks. And Sidney Matthew is a biographer for Bob Jones and has donated a lot of his research that he has done, that has produced many, many books on the life of Bob Jones to Emory University, one of the universities Mr. Jones attended. Didn't get a law degree. I want to say that every time because he passed the bar so quickly. He went to Harvard. He got an engineering degree from Georgia Tech. Did he consider himself, probably not, an intellectual? Because he certainly was. Well,
most real serious golfers at that time were caddies who had been the best players. Gene Sarazen was a caddy, and he never graduated from college. But the interesting thing was when Jones went over to Great Britain, he was accepted as an intellectual equal because he had graduated from Georgia Tech, from Harvard, with a law degree. And not all caddies could have a conversation with the Duke of Windsor about Jeannie Deans, the heroine of Sir Walter Scott's A Heart of Midlothian. Jones named his driver Jeannie Deans after the heroine. And Jones was able to converse with the upper crust of society. He could also converse with the caddies. He treated kings and caddies alike, which was very unusual. He wasn't a snob at all.
The next phase of his life, he was still somebody who was just approaching 30 years of age when he decided that he wanted to build his dream golf course. And this particular photograph shows the original Augusta National Golf Club, as well as some other individual photographs with some of his contemporaries as well. And when you look at the aerial shots and you look at Augusta National today, and so much of it had to do, Sidney, with his love. You already mentioned St. Andrews a couple of times. Would he recognize Augusta National today?
He would, although Jones and McKenzie both said trees have no useful purpose on a golf course other than aesthetics. So I think he'd be amazed at the growth of the trees. But the golf course still has the same feel, the same shot values that they wanted to instill in the original golf course.
It was a very hard time in the United States when he chose this undertaking, and Clifford Roberts was so important. In your studies, did he ever fear that this would fail? Well, it did fail.
They went broke 2 or 3 times and had to reorganize. They went through bankruptcy. They were scrimping and saving. You had to be crazy to build a golf course for $125,000 during the height of the Depression. Golf clubs were folding. They were not burgeoning, so nobody could afford to be a member. And if it had not been for several of the well-heeled members, Alfred Severn Bourne, some of the other well-heeled members, Harry Atkinson of Florida Power, Georgia Power, who was also an Eastlake member, they helped fund the club through these hard times. And then, of course, when television came along, that was the explosion. You had a fellow named Arnold Palmer,
who was certainly very instrumental as television, as you said, came along. You mentioned some of these individuals. You have a manuscript on the founders of Augusta National. Do you have plans to explore telling the world about these particular individuals? Because so much is centered, and rightfully so, on Jones and Roberts. Are you going to do something with that manuscript?
Well, I do have Titans of Golf, Founders of Augusta. Now, these are not the people who are living. They don't want they want to keep their lives private, and I respect that. But some of the folks who have already passed on, who were the founders, terrific stories. One of them, Bill Danforth, was the fellow who accurately predicted the stock market crash, and he acted on it, selling $6 million worth of stock short, and then the crash occurred, and he was the only one who came out of it. Cliff Roberts, of course, he didn't make it, but Bill Danforth did, and then he hired a fellow named Francis Ouimet and taught him the stock trade. So these are extraordinary people. Melvin Traylor was president of the First National Bank of Chicago, and he was also president of the USGA in 1928. We see photographs of him handing the trophy to Bob. So, they're extraordinary people with extraordinary lives. They happened to love golf, and so that tied them together.
And it's interesting that last gentleman you mentioned really told Clifford Roberts about what he thought was going to happen to the market and really saved his financial fortune. Roberts and Jones, very different backgrounds, very different men, but they had this common love for this place. Their relationship, why did they have such an affinity for each other, knowing how different they both were?
Well, Jones always said, a man's priceless treasures are his friendships, and a man who has many friendships has a rich life indeed. And I think it was the camaraderie that Cliff enjoyed being around other golfers and extraordinary people, Eisenhower, some of these other titans of industry that we're talking about. And Jones, of course, just treated them like they were just ordinary people. So they developed this relationship around all of these extraordinary people, and of course the result is what we see today.
Well, we thank you for sharing all of this, not only the information, but all these wonderful keepsakes. And I know that Emory University is thrilled that the manuscripts, archives, and rare books library there is going to have so much of your work that you have used to develop these books. Thank you for sharing the time.
Well, it's my pleasure, Bob.